I guess so.
Hey, not ready is good. So, okay. So if you're not ready to do that, go ahead, Donna Bond.
Well, I am Donna Bond. I am a catalyst for personal transformation. I'm the author of Original Wisdom, Harness the Power of the Authentic You. And Jeff Smith told me this was my chance to screw around. You can find me at donnabond.com. Would love to connect.
I love it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back. Great laugh. All right.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Zimmer, thank you so much for coming back to Vroom Vroom Veer, and welcome to the show. How's it going, man?
It is going well. Besides for the fact that I got a headache and I got to take a crap. No, not true. It's what you want me to say. You set me up for this. But I'm willing to do it because we're going to talk something about spiritual habits and all that. But I think that levity is absolutely a spiritual virtue. Having a good laugh is a big part of the spiritual life.
We can talk more about that because, like, I think I try to walk that line, and I know you try to walk that line too, right? Because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like addiction, recovery, all these things, they're kind of heavy, Yeah. They're not kind of heavy. They're fucking heavy. So it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to know when it's okay to laugh and be light.
What's fascinating, though, is if you walk into any sort of recovery meeting in the world, you'll hear a ton of laughter. Like laughter, part of the way.
It's part of the lube, social lube.
That's right. And it's part of the way we heal and take shame away, right?
Right.
Because when you laugh about something, you kind of suspend judgment on it temporarily, and you can look at it in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we need with these really heavy topics is a little bit of opening of consciousness so that we can relax around it.
Right. Yeah, I've had like 2 recent conversations where we're talking about attending a parent's death. And that is like, I'm kind of like trying to feel out where I can lighten the mood, Because you don't want to leave people there, right? So, it's great. I think it's the value of the show is going to those places and talking about those things. But you don't want to leave people there, right? You don't want to, leave them in the dark hallway. Okay. So you are at oneyoufeed.net and you've been on this show twice before, sort of. We'll talk about that, but at least once and twice because I recycled the other old one from the other show. So we've already sort of done your Vroomy Veery story, but let's just talk briefly about the One You Feed and what you're most excited about over there in your business and your podcast.
I think I'm most excited about this spiritual habits program that we have developed.
Right.
It's just, I started it a couple years ago, sort of trying to tie together 2 of the things I'm most interested in, which is behavior change and habits and, spiritual life, spiritual principles, and how might those 2, if they came together, amplify each other. And so that's kind of what the program has been. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about it partially just because I love teaching it. But the other part that's been wonderful is that we create these small groups of people, and a lot of those small groups of people continue to meet with each other well after the program.
Oh, wow.
And I just love that it's creating support and community for people. It's a problem I've been trying to solve for years. And I feel like we're kind of on the right track. So I'm excited about that.
That's fun. Yeah. So it's like you made your own little village.
Yeah. I mean, as we talked about, like, I come from a recovery background, and there's a lot of beauty in recovery support groups.
Totally.
And I've often thought, like, I wish there was a way to
valuable.
give that for other people. Like, how can you create something that's that intimate, that supportive, that loving, that funny for other people. And so I feel like I'm finally kind of cracking that code after thinking about it for years.
Right. Yeah, because I've often thought that. And I think Paul Williams, he was a recovery guy. That you know who Paul Williams is, singer songwriter.
I don't know the singer songwriter.
Yeah. Short little dude. He hung out. Yeah. Okay. Famously drunk on TV. How's that sound? There's a video of him on YouTube, and I think it's on the documentary where he was hosting the Tonight Show when Johnny Carson was off. Totally lit.
Oh wow. I haven't seen that.
That's worth watching because it's funny and sad.
Yeah.
But he tried to do that too. He was like, recovery's awesome and it should be for everybody.
Yeah.
I would say that's awesome. But what he said was, it's perfect as long as you don't tell people that's what you're basing your program on. Because nobody's going to come to a thing and say, hey, this is like recovery for the rest of us. Don't say that. That's what he was.
Well, right. And you don't want to,
you don't want to sell it like that.
Right. And you don't want to position it as we're coming here because we're broken.
Right. Totally.
It's we're coming here because we want to grow. Right. And we're coming here because, life is challenging. Life is challenging. And we can all use help and support as we walk.
Every day. Yes.
In life.
Actually, we need it. We found that out. And I'm again, that's like, we can get more into that. I think we talked about it before, but like a lot of one of the biggest things in my life that caused depression, anxiety, sort of like all those things that, you don't want in your life is like isolation, physical isolation, right? So that was happening to me when we talked the last 2 times. Because I was just basically not having a job at all, maybe going to college here and there. And my wife was working full time. So I was mostly alone all day, all week. Right. Yeah. And you already know that's not good for humans.
It's not an ideal state.
No. And it's not, I wasn't depressed at all, but I felt it, I felt it. I didn't go. So when I would go and have lunch with my buddy once a week, I would be like, just sad. When I was done, I was like, maybe I'll go have a beer and watch some more TV. That was, I think that was one of the comments that we said was like, I wanted to do nothing at all. And I was like, no, I've done that before. That's just beer and TV.
That's right. We have this fantasy of like, I would just love to, be able to do whatever I want with my time. And
right.
While ultimately, yes, we want our time to be a reflection of what we value, just having nothing to do or no plan of how to do it, when to do it, what to do. It doesn't work well for me and doesn't work well for most people I know and have worked with and coached and all that.
I would say isolation and that sort of time is awesome in very small doses.
Yes.
You need it in small doses, but you also need something that you're working on, something that engages your problem solving, something that contributes. And then you need people around, or a dog.
Dogs are good. I got 2 of them here in this apartment, and they are very good. I think that this idea of needing people is so important, and boy, has it been tough for people.
Yeah,
it's partially why we're seeing a mental health crisis emerging from the pandemic.
Right,
is, people are isolated, and while we're an online platform, you and I, I'm really interested in how can I facilitate connection between people, because online connection isn't, I would say it's not quite as good as face-to-face connection.
It's not as good, right.
But it's a whole lot better than nothing.
Right.
And we can build meaningful connections with people online that do matter to us. And that's for a lot of people. I'm working with a coaching client. She's immunocompromised. She can't get the vaccine. She's isolated, and she's just, she's rough. Been like, I need personal face-to-face stuff, but I can't have it. So instead there's nothing. And we're working on like, there's a lot of place between nothing and everything. Right.
Yes.
Yes. And that's part of, been my way of working with people, and part of the spiritual habits program too is, little by little, a little can become a lot. So if we start piecing together little moments of connection, before we know it, we're like, oh, okay, I'm not so isolated.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And the thing about like a Zoom call, right, is if you can have a Zoom call and even simulate eye contact,
Yeah.
that helps. It helps.
Totally. Yeah. It does make a big difference. I've noticed this, just to be like, while I'm on this call, I'm not going to do any of the 50 distractions that are at my fingertips.
Correct. Yes.
I'm gonna, like you said, I'm looking at you right now. I'm looking in your eyes. I'm trying to connect. And so it does take more effort that way. Yeah. But we can do it better and worse. And so, there is connection available there if we go after it in the right way.
Totally. So let's get into this, some of the principles that you're using for your program, because you sent me a list of things. That sounds fun. And then as we talk about it, I might interject, because I just listened to, I did some cyber stalking on you. So I listened to your show with you and Chris and talking about your friendship.
Oh, yeah.
As instant feedback, do more of that, because that was awesome.
We've been getting a lot of
that was really good.
Yeah, it's so interesting because both Chris and I are very reticent to sort of talk about ourselves.
It's a little too meta. Yeah.
The podcast is so very focused on, at least to me, on ideas and strategies and ways that,
right.
And the humanness, I hope, weaves through that. But for Chris and I to just sort of say, well, we're going to talk about ourselves for an hour
feels weird.
But but again, we were able to explore lots of principles and ideas, and I agree. I love doing it. We have gotten outstanding feedback on it. That it just really,
I'm jealous because
I've into the family.
I've had friendships like that, with dudes, right?
Yeah,
best friends. Like I still have a friend that I knew since I was 5. And he's that one of the guy that he can text me anytime, and call me anytime, and we just pick it up, right? So I have those; they're just not here, right? So it's like I don't know how many I've got. It's quite a few, and then as I pick them up, I just think, man, I need this now here in Vegas. And that's what one of the things that you and Chris brought up. But still, again, I could be Zooming. I should be Zooming more. It's free.
And I've made I've made an effort, not a good enough effort, but recently I've sort of said, I have met and talked to a lot of people, on the podcast, and I'm going to just pick a handful of them, and I'm just going to say, reach out and be like, I'd like to talk to you, just
on a show.
Just to talk.
Right. Just to chat.
Like I feel a connection. I'd like to deepen that. And sometimes that's, as adults, we just have to do it, and it feels awkward and it feels a little bit weird. But and a lot of times it doesn't work. Making friends as adults is tricky because we're often at different places in life.
Right.
You meet somebody and there's a little bit of connection, but your kid just graduated college and you got lots of free time, and they've got a 3 and a 5-year-old and I've got 0 free time. And so it just doesn't.
Right.
It's why it works so well in school, because everybody's in this exact same place in their life. So it just naturally works.
Yes.
So
humans need sort of like context. Like in a social context, friendships are automatic. That's sort of like it's not like automatic that you're going to be friends with everybody. I'm just saying, like, that is the context. Like if you go to, like, when I went to massage school, right? Easy peasy, just making friends, because guess what? You're going to be spending hours and hours a day with them, and you're screwing around and sharing time. You're going to connect with some of those people, and it's just, that's what humans do, right?
That's right. That's a great way of saying it, context. And that's part of what, again, I don't want to always be referring to the spiritual habits program, but that's the part of it I'm most excited about. That is the fact that I feel like we're creating that context, and people start talking in these weekly calls, and they start to have a shared language, because that's the other thing that happens. Right. It
Yes.
happened in AA. It has happened in my Zen practice. I'm sure it happened to you in massage school and psychology school.
Right.
You start to have a shared language
Right.
that allows you to sort of reference things that allows that friendship to build. And so I agree. I think that's a great observation.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so we were going to talk about, let's talk about these 4 principles that make it easy to build any habit. Yeah. So is that based on anything in the past, or is that just something?
Nope. Just made them up out of whole cloth. No,
I like it.
I just wrote a bunch of stuff, pulled it out of a hat, and said, "I'm just going to be these 4."
Okay.
No, it's based on a lot of our podcast interviews have been with behavior change scientists and practitioners. How do we change? And then obviously I have been in the recovery movements for 25 years. So I've been, obsessed with why do some of us get it and others don't?
Right. Okay.
What, and then in my own life, how do I build this habit versus that habit? And then, coaching hundreds of people, these things have sort of started to emerge.
Okay.
And so I won't say these are the only 4 principles, but they're 4 pretty foundational ones.
Okay.
And the first is to know your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why does this matter?
Yeah, that's pretty big.
If we're not clear on that, it's hard to get a lot of energy behind it. And a lot of times when people are like, well, I just keep trying to do this and I can't do it. The question sometimes to ask is, why are you trying to do it?
Right.
Maybe you're trying to do something that just isn't that important to you. And if it's not that important to you, let it go. But if it is, let's clarify why. Let's get emotional about why it matters. And then next,
that's big because we always do. Everything that we act on has to flow from an emotional sort of, you can't intellectualize getting to doing something, right? You can't think like, I'm going to think that I need to exercise more. No, you have to feel an emotion that drives that, right? Yes.
That's right. And so a way to do that is it's an exercise that comes out of the Japanese Kanban, sort of.
My wife is from Japan, so I spend a lot of time in Japan.
I think it may come straight out of Toyota or somewhere, right? But I'm being serious. Okay. Like that may be, but it may have a deeper, may be deeper than that. But it certainly got picked up in the Japanese sort of manufacturing renaissance. Okay. And it was to ask why 5 times.
Oh, right.
I want to do this. Why? Well, I want to do it because I want to be in better shape. Why? I want to be in better shape because the way I feel in my body just day to day doesn't feel very good. Why is that important? You keep drilling down. And at a certain point, you can't go any further. But what it's doing, it's getting you in touch with that energy of emotion. And what you may find down there might be good or bad. You might be like, because this feels awful.
Right.
Or because, oh no, this feels good. Or I'm doing it because I want to be around for my grandkids' graduation. Great. That's a beautiful motivation, right? But what's under it? So know your why. From there, start small
start small is very important, right?
Yeah. Just and this is a calibration, right? You how small should you start? Well, it depends, right? It's hard to know. But what I say is if you're trying and you're not succeeding, bring it
smaller.
Down.
Yeah.
Make it smaller. You can to a certain point. Like I built a beautiful meditation practice after 15 years of failing at it from really committing to 3 minutes.
That's awesome.
And just being serious about that 3 minutes. And then I was able to build. And now, it's a big part of my life.
Right.
The next is to be specific. What am I doing? When, where, why, etc. Going to use our example of like, well, I want to get in better shape. That's not going to work as well as every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. I'm going to take a walk around the block for 20 minutes. Okay, that's concrete. I can do it.
That's awesome.
Because we want to drive ambiguity out of the process. Ambiguity is our enemy because you can imagine.
Like if you just say to yourself, I'm going to work out, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to work out, right? So then when you get to that time to put on your shoes, then you have to think about it.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
if, for example, I'm like, I'm going to work out today.
Right.
Okay. Well, when? I'm going to spend a
Are you
lot
going
of
to
time.
drive to the gym? Are you?
Yes.
Where are your shoes? You know.
And
Right.
all that deciding
Can talk you out of it. Right.
burns energy. It
Totally.
burns resources. So
Right.
so when it comes time to do it, you're already depleted, which leads us to kind of the last one, which is to separate decision from action. Decide ahead of time what you're going to do. So when the time comes, you're not in a deciding process. You're just in a doing process.
You're executing. Yes.
You can put all of your cognitive resources and energy and willpower into just doing. The other thing is you can decide from a better place, right? There's often, I think of like, we have a higher self and a lower self. And I don't mean this in a spiritual sense. I actually just mean this in a metaphorical sense.
Okay.
The higher self is the me that can step back and go, what's good for me?
Okay.
Oh yeah, this is what's important. This is what matters. This is how I want to orient my life, and it can make good decisions. Then there's the me that shows up moment to moment, day to day. This is the moment of me that shows up that has a headache, that was just out on the road rushing around and feels frazzled, that, is hungry, didn't sleep well last night. We don't want that self making the decisions.
Right.
Because it's inevitably short-sighted and it's inevitably focused on my mood. We want to be
energy compromised.
That's yes.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal.
It
so
is.
we want to be living our life from those better decisions.
Right.
So separating decision from action. So those are the 4 principles kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the way you said, I'm going to take a walk around the block for 20 minutes because I've been doing that and it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do it immediately. If I'm going to do it, I do it like right out of bed. Right. So it's like I go in, I do the little bathroom thing, I get the coffee going, and then I put my shoes on and I'm out the door. Right. There's no thinking.
And you've got all the key elements there, right? You know what you're doing, you know when you're doing it. It's not anchored to a time, but it's anchored to
I'm out
other
of bed. Right. Yes.
I get out. This happens. So we in the behavior change science we call that an anchoring kind of trigger, or an event-based trigger, which I'm going off of something I already do. Right. We all have some of these things. After I walk the dogs, like if you've got dogs, you take your dog out every morning. It always happens. It's a great trigger. You can anchor to it. Right. After I make my coffee, that always happens. Right. When I get in bed, that always happens. So we can anchor things to events. Other events.
Yeah, events.
We don't always have to anchor at time. Right. Right. We don't have to be 7 a.m. Sometimes 7 a.m. is the right thing, but sometimes it's the other events are a better anchor. You just
it'll get short circuited if it's summertime in Vegas and I sleep in, because then I get out of bed and it's too damn hot.
That's right. That's right.
And that's okay. Then I just say, well, that's okay. It's the weekend. We can go to the casino and spend $2 and walk for as long as we want.
That's great. That's what we would call sort of
we're going to do that anyway. We do that every day. It's like
yeah. Flexibility is building long-term habits takes this combination of a certain amount of rigidity and stubbornness and a certain amount of flexibility. Which is like you just said, like if you were being only rigid, you would wake up and you'd be like, well, it's too hot to walk. That's it. Right. Instead, you're like, okay, it's too hot to get my exercise and my movement in that way, but it's still important enough to me. That's the rigidity. Right. But I'm going to be flexible and I'm going to go do it in a different way. It's a beautiful strategy.
Yeah. Middle road kind of idea.
Oh, that is one of the principles in spiritual habits. One of the principles is the middle, and we explore.
Let's talk about the middle way. What is the middle way?
I'll talk about it all day.
I knew this was going to be fun and easy, but I didn't. This is extra fun and easy. Right. Yes.
Well, the middle way is a concept that phrase flows most recently out of Buddhism, but that concept is everywhere. You can look at, all the Greek philosophers. You can look at any philosophical tradition you want to look at, Confucius. It's everywhere. And it's this idea that there is a path that avoids the extremes.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, and we can look at anything through this light. So, for example, a great way to look at it is like a character trait. You might say, like, well, okay, what's courage? Well, courage is actually a middle place between being rash and foolish and being like paralyzed by fear. It's actually kind of in between there.
Right.
It's a middle ground where
Yes.
you're like,
Right.
same thing, like kindness. Kindness is a middle ground between, being mean and being a doormat. Like there's a place. So we want to look at all these things.
Right.
But the middle way also then starts to apply to, like we just talked about, like with exercise, which is like, okay, well, I couldn't do it that way, but I'm going to be flexible. Or the middle way with things like exercise and habits really happens because a lot of times we're like, if I don't do it perfect, I just quit.
Oh, the all or nothing kind of thing.
All or nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so in the program, we're exploring that where are all the places that all or nothing thinking shows up in our life?
That makes me think of a couple things. So, are you a video gamer? Do you ever get into video games or computer games? Not so much.
I mean, I've played them, but it's never been a big thing of mine.
So there was this game that I played with a friend. It was called Portal 2. Okay. And it probably was the most fun co-op kind of game.
Uh-huh.
So it's cooperative. That means that you need him to solve this puzzle. So they're 3D puzzles, right? So every map, every level has like two pieces of a puzzle. It's like you've got to figure out what the hell's going on.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to figure out how to execute the solution.
With this other person. That's beautiful.
With the other person. Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to do it together, right?
Yeah.
So we both had like different personalities, right? So I tended to be the run in and die, right? Because there was very little consequence to killing your little robot.
Right.
So you would die and I would get some information. Okay, that kills me. Okay, I can't do that jump, right? Things like that. Yeah. And he was like loath to die, right? He didn't want to kill his little robot ever, right? But he would just like walk around the edges very carefully.
Yeah.
So we were using extremes to explore that middle path.
Absolutely. That's another way. I'm so glad you said that. That's another way. It's not always, the middle way is not always split the difference.
Right.
Sometimes the middle way is I actually hold these two very different ideas or these two very different concepts.
Right.
Or like you said, I've got one person's here, other person's here. The combination of us actually
gives you more information. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, the middle way is not always just split the difference, right? There's an old King Solomon, tale where he's, talking about two mothers who are arguing over whose baby it is. And he's like, well, let's just cut the baby in half then. Split it.
I remember that story.
Right. That doesn't work. There's actually more wisdom in that story because he's actually trying to ferret out who the real mother is. Mother is. No way. But it speaks to the point that not everything is just, run it right down the middle.
Right. Totally.
Not the only way on the middle way. The other thing about the middle way that's really important is depending on where you are on any given thing, you may need to go a very different direction. So if I'm working with coaching clients, some of them are way too hard on themselves, and we've got to really work on undoing that. Right. Other people are they have no interior accountability structure. We've got to work on building that. And so that's why I love the middle way, because it points to, for any of us, right. All right, which way am I over too much on? How do I want to correct? Right. So there's so much wisdom.
You can actually like overdo the middle way. Yeah, you have to moderate your moderation. Right.
That's right. And And it doesn't work for everything. Like I believe in the middle way so deeply, and I believe in moderation. And I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict.
Right.
That moderation does not work in that area for me. I just
You
had to
can't.
say,
Yeah.
you know what?
Right.
It's off.
It's
The
got to be
setting is
off.
off,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know. And so yeah, it doesn't work in every area, but there are so many applications of it that we could look at in our lives. You know,
Totally.
you could look at it like, what's the middle way between obsessing about the state of the world and the news and making myself insane
Right.
versus sticking my head in the sand and not knowing anything?
Right.
Where's the middle way there?
Right.
And
right.
depending on your personality type, you might go, okay, I need to move a little bit that other direction, you know?
Totally.
And the middle way is going to be different. The answer to that question is going to be very personal for you. Where is
Right.
it?
Right.
But
right,
it's
right.
always a good question to ask. Am I in all or nothing thinking? Am I over too far to one extreme?
Right.
You know, it's always a useful question.
And I like, I think, making it, one of those principles was making it start small, I think is what it
Start
you said.
small. Yeah.
Start
yeah.
small. That I think is huge. I think if you're trying to learn how to make a habit, the start small thing for me was like a huge aha, because I think
Yes.
that kind of get lost, especially say like trying to work out, right? There's this sort of like all or nothing thinking in that, like, oh, well, you're not doing it right. Right.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
Sometimes you just need to learn how to make a habit. And to learn how to make a habit, it should be so easy that it's like near impossible to fail. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really, again, this is a calibration. How small you need to go depends on who you are. But your point is very, very important. If we look at the way like world-class trainers work with world-class athletes, what they do, I'm not going to say this is the case for everyone, but one approach is that they sort of go, all right, in order for this athlete to compete at the level we want, we need them working out at this amount at this intensity.
Right.
But where they start is they go, okay, first, let's focus on consistency. So if we need them doing 2 workouts a day, 5 days a week, let's get them doing 2 workouts a day, 5 days a week. Now, again, for most of us, that's nowhere near starting small. But my point is they're focused on the consistency.
Right.
They'll make that workout as small as it needs to be just so that it gets the consistency.
Right,
this is why my meditation habit of 3 minutes a day works so well, because I went, all right, I can do that every day. So now I've got consistency. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Then they build duration. They go, okay, we're doing it for, say, an hour, or I'm doing my meditation for 3 minutes. They'll go, all right, let's go to an hour and a half. Or I might say, I'm going to go to meditating for 5 minutes. So then they build duration to where it needs to be. And then finally they turn up the intensity to where it needs to be.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So the starting small
You're building the scaffolding sort of.
Yeah. And the consistency is the scaffolding.
Right.
If you can get that in place, then you can build it. My meditation habit, can go from 3 minutes a day to 30 to 40 minutes a day. Now that takes a period of time, but that's where it can end up. We can build if we have that consistency down.
Yeah, totally. I get it. That's, and it works too. So I've
Totally.
used that to build habits, and I actually surprised myself. We had one of these work things where it's like they roped me into the summer fit challenge. Right. And at that point, I was already, I think I was pretty committed to doing at least, I think 3 nights a week. We were going to the casino to walk just because I needed to get out of the house.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of easy. It was just like, I've been in the house, and then my wife got a job. So then I was alone again all day. So then I was like, let's get out of the house. I just wanted a change of scenery. So that was easy. When the fit challenge kicked off, I was like, okay, I wonder how early I have to get out of bed. In Vegas in the summer, it turned out to be about 4:30.
Oh my goodness. That's
I know. Well, it was still dark, right? So even if it's like over 100 degrees and as long as the sun's not beating down on you, it's not as bad. It's weird what you get used to living in Vegas. That's what I'll say.
I imagine it's an extreme climate.
Exactly. But all those things, all those principles still worked. So I was going to say, I never really got leaderboard at anything because I wasn't doing anything that really counted as a workout. But I did because I was every day. I was that was what I won on was every day. Because both of my workouts weren't really even workouts. I was just walking.
But you had the consistency.
Huge. I think I was up there with the everyday because most people can't work out every day. I mean, but if you're just walking for 20 minutes, it's not really a workout. You're just walking for 20 minutes.
And it's so good for you. I mean, there's so many reasons why a 20-minute walk every day is, even if you are doing other things. Like I have become a big fan the last couple of years of like, pop out the door and do 5 minutes, pop out the door and do 10 minutes.
Oh, that's beautiful. You
know, get out of the house in between, because in between like coaching calls, oftentimes I'll have 10 minutes and I could sit at my computer for 10 minutes and catch up on email or play a game or check the news. And I'm really pushing myself, like get up and move, either go outside and walk or 10 minutes, do a few minutes of yoga. Like I just have been little by, it's that little by little, a little becomes a lot idea, right? Like all those little moments add up and they contribute to my physical and mental and emotional health.
See, and we all have cell phones now. One of the things that I like doing that like got me moving, especially during, 115 degree weather in Vegas, I was listening to podcasts on my phone, walking around the house like a rat in a maze. That worked. I mean, I felt way better than just sitting and watching TV or screwing around on the computer like I always do.
Yeah. I mean, we had a woman on, it's been a long time ago. Her name was, but I remember it. It stands out to me. Her name was Michelle Seeger, and she was an exercise researcher. And her first rule was just move anytime, any way that you can. Just that if you just adopt that rule, just when in doubt, move and do it in a way that feels okay to you. Like if you do that, you'll figure it out. You'll be all right.
I like that. I got into kettlebells. So I got 2 kettlebells, a 35 and a 45. Actually, I already had the 45 from way back when.
I bet you got a nice looking ass now then.
My ass is supreme.
No, I mean I just remember that early on in the kettlebell craze, that's what the people were saying, like, oh, for women, it's going to develop a
really nice ass. I don't know. I'd have to ask my wife. I try not to judge my own ass.
Probably good.
I love kettlebells.
Let me know what she says.
Yeah, I love kettlebells because you can. I don't like paying for a gym membership. I would rather it just be free. I can go to the gym on the Air Force Base, but it's like a 30-minute drive. So that's like an hour of investment that I just don't want to do.
It's It's fascinating. There are studies about like the further your gym is from your house, there's just an inverse less likelihood to actually work out. Like, I mean, it's been measured. It's like, well, if your gym's like 3 miles away, okay, decent. If it's 15 miles, I mean,
right.
Now, some people just really are like, I need to get out and go work out at a place. Like that's a thing. And so I'm not saying like, you're having a gym's a bad idea.
I think you've already got it. Like when I was doing yoga in LA, I was driving 30 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
But that was a context that I was addicted to, right?
That's right. Yeah. And there's no hard and fast rules here.
Right. And I was really into that community. So it's not like I wouldn't drive 30 minutes, but not starting. It's so much easier in a pandemic to go in the backyard and play with kettlebells.
I was always a go to the gym kind of guy. Always.
Right.
My whole life. And then Peloton sponsored our show, and they said, we're going to send you one of those bikes. I never would have bought.
Holy cow. Yeah.
Never would have.
They're awesome, but they cost an arm and a leg.
Thought of it.
Yeah.
They sent the thing to me, 30 days to use it. And after 30 days, I was like, there is no way I'm sending this back. I know it's expensive,
Right.
but
It's worth
like,
it.
I am getting incredible workouts at home and I am loving it.
And it's fun.
I'm not turning this into a Peloton commercial. But
That's okay.
what I will say is that like follow what you feel interested in and what moves you. I doubt Peloton is something I'm going to want to do forever, but like with yoga, you know,
Yeah.
or me with Pilates or boxing, or right now I'm doing rock climbing. Like
wow, that's fun.
find something that's enjoyable.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
You know, follow your interest.
Totally. Rock climbing sounds amazing.
I am loving it. I mean, I'm doing it indoors. Let me be clear. I'm not out hanging off a crag yet. Although maybe someday I will.
Yeah.
But it has been, been really fun.
You really have to work on your grip strength, right? To hold on to the little handholds.
Yeah, you definitely grip strength, forearm strength, but also, you know, ability to sort of pull yourself up. So that kind of strength.
Okay.
Also legs. A lot of rock climbing is legs. You know, the more you can use your legs, the better. They're just much stronger than your hands.
That's true.
And then it's also, I love it because it's a puzzle. You know,
right.
A great deal of like
problem solving.
There's a great deal of technique. I mean, it's just I love any sort of movement that I can do that also gets my brain engaged in some way.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's with Peloton. I like that because it was always moving. It was like, you know, trying to get here, get the resistance here, get the speed here, hold it. Okay, now move the resistance here, move the speed there. Now hold it.
Okay.
Like there's enough with my brain to do versus like, you know,
and there's somebody on that's live that you're watching and they're telling you to do these things, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's fun. And you're doing it with other people usually, is like in a online class.
Yeah. I tend to do the on-demand rides because I just don't show up at a certain time. But even in those, there are other people that are doing them with you. And
neat.
Yeah, the community is fun. They've done a good job with that. But you can sort of look at some of those principles and say, all right, how do I build some of that into my own life, my own routines?
Totally. So let's talk about these two surprising elements that drive all spiritual transformation. I like surprises, and I like spiritual transformation.
Yes. How's that for marketing copy? The two surprising elements that drive, like, you know,
perfect.
You got to do it, right? But they're not. They're pretty straightforward, and everybody's going to know about them. And but they are foundational. And the first is intention. And I don't mean this in like a law of attraction secret way. Like, if you just imagine a new car, it's going to show up. That's not, I actually mean something very different. Gotcha. I mean, who do I want to be in the world in different situations? Who do I, you know, so it's really about asking about its intention is who do I want to be? But it's also, you can look at it broadly, like, well, I want to be a kinder person, but you can also look at it very specifically, like you're sitting down to have dinner with your wife. What do I want? What's important about this?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I want to be during this? What do I want to bring to this? It takes us off of autopilot,
right,
and allows us to become, as the word says, intentional about what we're doing with our life. And that's what, for a lot of us, keeps us from greater spiritual growth, is we're on autopilot. We're just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Maybe we build a meditation habit in the morning if we're lucky, if we can even get that far. But then the rest of the day, it's pretty divorced. So we got to think more often about what's important, my intention. And then the second is my attention. What am I doing with my attention?
Right.
And not to play word soup, but how does that tie back to my intention? Mm-hmm. So if my intention at dinner with my wife is to connect with her and be present, then I can look, where's my attention? My attention might be on the last call I had at work. Well, that's not aligned with my intention, so I bring it back. So where our attention is fundamental to the quality of life. It is perhaps the most fundamental thing about the quality of my life. What am I paying attention to? Wow. And does that align with what's most important to me, with what really matters, with where I want it to be? So those two things are pretty foundational to any spiritual work, any development work that we want to do in life anywhere,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That's good, because, and I like the way that you made me think of, fighting with my wife. All of my fights with my wife are my fault and stupid. But
Your opinion or hers?
probably both. Okay. But I only know it after, it seems like. But I think what you're saying is like, I think I've lost sort of like a fight with myself, and I already know that I've lost that fight. So she's from Japan, right? So her primary language is Japanese. Her English is really good, right? But she doesn't, she's still not a native speaker, right?
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to forget that with somebody that you're so close with, intimate with. So that's what I do on a regular basis, and I know I do it. It's one of those things, though, that I have to get intentional about, like, why I'm, let's not do that anymore. Right? Yeah.
And so yeah, and so the spiritual habits program is about those things, and then saying, how can I actually start to bring them more into the moments of my life? How do I do that? And this is where the habit part comes in. This is where we go, oh, we can use things like triggers. We get, there are different types of triggers. Like, you could be like, well, every time I go in the kitchen, I want to X. I call them building still points. And they're just small. But if we can build them, every time I go in the kitchen, I'll do X. Right. Every time I end one meeting, I'll do Y. Okay. 3 times a day on my calendar, I'll take a minute. And once we have the still point, think of it as a container. We can put anything in it. So in that container, you could be like, every time I go into the kitchen, I'm going to remember how I want to treat my wife this evening.
Oh, that's good.
Boom. All right. Now we've got a spiritual habit.
I like that.
So what we're doing throughout the program is we're taking these basic principles,
right,
middle way, other ones, and we're then using behavior change science to try and anchor those things at different points through our day so that we can start to live out of those principles more.
Yeah, like you said, every time I go to the kitchen, you could easily say every time I go to the bathroom, or every time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody has to go to the bathroom. So that's like
yeah, or every red light, or
yes.
You look for the natural transitions in your life. Where are they?
Perfect.
And how can I anchor something in there that's positive?
So let's talk about resistance. So talk about resistance and how to drop that, I guess, and figure out, first off, what does resistance feel like to you?
Well, it feels like suffering.
Okay.
There's a meditation teacher we had on the show again a long time ago, but Bob
Thurman or somebody else?
No,
not Bob. Okay.
His name's Shinzen Young.
Oh, neat. Okay.
He I think is the person who coined this equation, and the equation is that suffering equals pain times resistance.
Okay. All right.
So let's think about, I'll give you an example from my own life. My partner, Ginny's mom, has Alzheimer's. And every month for 3.5 years, we go to Atlanta for half the month, and then we drive back to Columbus. And we go to Atlanta, and we've been doing this shuffle for 3.5 years, right? And I will say that living that way has a certain amount of inconvenience to it. I'll just call it pain for now, right?
Okay.
Now, let's just say that I'm just making things up here, but let's say that pain is on a level of 1 to 10 is like a 3.
Okay.
Right? When I start getting into, I don't want to do it. Why do I have to do this?
Yes.
It's not fair that we have to do this. Why isn't Ginny's sister helping more? All those are resistances.
Okay.
So let's just say, for example, that my resistance score on a level of 1 to 10 is also a 5. I'm really like, I just don't want to do it.
Gotcha.
All of a sudden now I have a 15 score of suffering, 5
Right.
times 3, right?
Right. Totally. Yes.
So if I can turn down that resistance, even by like 2, go from a 5 to a 3 on my resistance level, I just resist a little bit less. I just sort of, when my brain starts going, I don't want to, I just sort of go, well, we've already decided this aligns with your values. Just relax. I bring the resistance down, right? If I bring that resistance down to a 3, now I have 9 points of suffering versus 15. And I did nothing to the original situation.
Right. The pain is still a 3.
Right. So this if you start to look in your life, you start to see resistance everywhere. You're like, I should go for a walk. Resistance. I need to do this thing in my workday, and I don't like to do it.
I have a story to go with resistance that I worked out.
Tell me.
Yeah. So I was feeling resistance every time we flew to Japan. So, flying to Japan is like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay. So that pain is whatever it is, right? Give it a 3, right? So then we would land in Japan. And we're not done yet, right? So we have to land in Japan, and then we have to take all the bags and bring them over to the shipping place, right? And then ship them. So there's this whole like another set of hours in the airport, right?
Right.
And I'm already tired and grumpy.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm resisting in my head. I'm like, why doesn't everybody in the world know that I'm tired and grumpy already, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So the voice in my head is screaming at the world, thinking it can hear you, hear me in my head screaming, right? I'm tired and I want to lay down and go to bed and I can't and I'm mad, right?
Yeah.
That's resistance for me.
That's resistance.
That's resistance. So then there was another like 3 hours of train rides, and then we have to sit and chat, right? So it's like this whole other day of more after a very long flight. So there's things that you can do to reduce that pain.
Yeah.
Because that pain was a lot, right? That's a lot of pain, right? So we were like, okay, let's not do it all in one trip. Let's like land, mail the stuff, and then get a hotel. Okay, so I literally reduced the pain. That's another thing you can do.
You can,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dropping the resistance is it's the serenity prayer, right? Like you can change something that's problematic, you ought to probably change it.
Yes.
But if you can't, or you've decided this is what I'm doing.
I'm going to do it anyway. Right.
Because it aligns with my values, then
I have to live with this pain. I don't. Right. So like I said, like at some point I was looking at all these people, right? And they're looking back at me, and all I want to do is just be horizontal, for fuck's sake,
Yeah.
And,
totally.
Yeah. And I realized, they don't really know or care, right? What's going on in my head. I know they love me and they're my family, but they don't know or care about what I'm doing in my head, right? So me whining about it in my head doesn't help.
No.
It's not doing anything. So then I just decided to accept it. So when we landed, I would have a sandwich and a beer. And you already know what kind of medicine beer is.
I'm very familiar with that kind of medicine. I've sort of taken that to its end limit.
Yes, yeah. That you didn't get the middle path there for you, but
I did. Unfortunately, I've often said 2 beers is the best antidepressant I have ever found in all my life.
If you could only stop. Yes.
I've been searching, but I can't stop. Yeah.
So that was great. So you taught me that was a great lesson about resistance, how to let it go. So let's talk about, let's see here, this powerful perspective question. Help you let go of any difficult situation. So this is just a reframe, it sounds like.
It's a reframe, but it's a specific reframe. And it comes from, there's a Buddhist idea of there are 3 marks of existence.
Okay.
This is going to get heady really quick, and then I'm going to yank us back up out of it.
Sounds good.
First mark is impermanence. We can all see this. Things are impermanent.
Right.
The second mark is, it's called dukkha, or suffering or unsatisfactoriness. And then the last one is called anicca, non-self. But all that just sounded like gibberish. There's a reformulation of that that a wise Buddhist teacher by the name of Ruth King came up with, and it's permanent, personal, and perfect.
Permanent,
and so what
personal,
yeah,
and permanent.
and perfect. So what I can
perfect.
ask
Okay.
myself is, all right, am I thinking that whatever I'm going through is permanent? If so, I'm suffering. Right?
Right.
You could look at your thing and be like, I am really tired. I really want to be in bed, and I'm going to be done with dinner with them in an hour. This is going to end.
Right.
Right? Okay. That reframe of just reminding ourselves, okay, this is not permanent. What
It's
I'm
not going to
feeling
last forever. Right.
is going to change.
Right.
The second then is personal. And this we can think about this on a couple levels. One is you can sort of go, well, it's not personal that I'm tired after flying for 2 days. There's nothing wrong with me. That's just life. That's a natural part of the human condition.
Right.
So I don't have to think that this is happening to me as in like something that's bad. Like I could be like, well, why do we have to go to Atlanta every couple of weeks? Well, old people get sick. That's just part of the human condition.
Right.
I am just part of and so I can remember that not only is it happening not just to me, I can connect with the fact that like lots of people go through this. I'm part of the human family. I can right. Relax that. And then perfect is we just have this idea that like life has to be this certain way in order for us to be happy. And we spend a lot of time trying to get everything to line up, and that just never works.
Right.
And so recognizing like, okay, it's not, this dinner with my family when I'm really tired is not the perfect family dinner that everybody wants, but that's okay. That's right. What families are. It doesn't have to be perfect. The psychologist Albert Ellis said that unhappy people hold on to 3 unrealistic expectations. They think that they should always do well. They think that people should always treat them well. And they think that life should always go well. And if that's your expectation, you're going to constantly be frustrated because we know that none of those things are true. Right. There are times we don't do well. Right. There are times people are not particularly nice to us, and there are times that life doesn't go well. What's a wise response to that? So permanent, personal, and perfect is just a quick way when I'm in a suffering in a moment to remind myself it's not permanent. This isn't personal. I can see how I connect to the broader family. I can see how this is just the human condition, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. I can let go of my expectation that this is wrong.
Right.
It shouldn't be happening.
Right.
That's the ultimate.
The shouldn't.
It shouldn't be happening.
Right.
So,
right.
So permanent, personal, and perfect is just a very quick reframe. And there are sub questions under each of those that we can, that can be explored as different ways, but it's a very simple, quick reframe. And if we had more time, I'd give you 10 examples of ways in my life that's gotten me out of a difficult situation, but that's the essence of it.
Gotcha. How are you doing on time? Should we be wrapping up now because it's already an hour?
You tell me, how long do you like to go?
I usually do an hour, so we can wrap up now. I mean, we can do one more if you want to, and then wrap.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay, sure.
All right, I do this thing called food rescue, where it's a volunteer thing where we go to places that have food, like a restaurant that aren't use them, and we take them to places where we donate the food. So I did a rescue this morning of about 8 bags of bread, and I took it to the place, and they were like, we can only take 1. So now I'm in the midst of this scramble with the other food rescuers, like, where can we take this bread? So that's what I'm doing here with a little bit of texting, is trying to arrange these other 7 bags of amazing bread from this great deli in Columbus, making sure they get somewhere they can be used.
Oh, well, that's a worthy interruption.
Yeah, I've been loving food rescue. It's been a great
food rescue. Wow.
It's just, it appeals to my frugality. Like, let's not let things go to waste.
Yeah.
I can just sign up for a route, be like, all right, I got time. I'll go grab food here, take it there. Like, it's not a
humongous commitment.
Yeah, which I can't do because I'm in Columbus half the time, Atlanta half the time. I'm always going back and forth. So I can't make like every week I'll be here to do X. So
Right.
it suited me perfectly. It's been such a great addition to my life.
Oh, nice. Food rescuers.
Food rescuer. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a food rescuer.
You should get a superhero outfit.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk as we wrap up. So you
Yeah.
are Eric Zimmer, oneyouFeed.net.
Yeah.
And let's talk about all or nothing thinking, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Go ahead. So I know I'm probably guilty of this. Like in the military, you've got like sort of like this whole perfect thing, right? There's a regulation and an instruction and a direction for everything, and then it's all written out how things are supposed to be. It never works that way.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so like the all or nothing attitude for me was like, why isn't it like the book? Hey, that's sort of like, it's supposed to be that way, right?
Right.
Yeah. Is that sort of like where you're going with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there are lots of examples of all or nothing thinking. But I just gave one, right? All or nothing thinking is, well, if I can't make a, serious volunteer commitment every week to something, then I can't help.
Right.
Well,
Right.
there are ways. I found I had to search, but I found ways that said, okay, there's a middle way here. I can contribute as I'm able.
Right.
Okay. I contribute as I'm able. So that's an example of if I was in all or nothing thinking. My podcast is another example of it. When I started, I had a full-time job. Well, you're a beautiful example of this.
Right.
You are a beautiful example of this. You've been doing it just as I did. I was like, all right, well, I can, I've got a full-time job and I need to keep it for blah, 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 blah reasons.
Right.
Right. And I really want to do this other thing. So all or nothing thinking would say either I have to quit my job and go do podcasting full-time, which is a fool's errand.
Right.
Or I have to keep my job, but I just can't do it. You and I both found a way that said, no, there is a middle way here.
Right.
I can keep my job and I can commit to that, but I can also find a way to devote some portion of my attention to this other thing that I love. So that's middle way thinking.
Right.
I saw I've seen a lot of people in my life that pick one or the other. We get ourselves into these false choices.
Gotcha.
I'll give you another really personal middle way example. I was in a bad marriage for the first number of years I was doing this podcast, probably when you and I talked.
Okay.
And we were stuck in this dance of stay or go, stay or go, stay. It was all I explored. It was either I'm staying or I'm leaving. And it was just, I couldn't get neither of them I could live with because I had a son and she had a son that we had brought together in a mixed family and we had dogs. We finally landed on, we were able to say, you know what? We're going to let the marriage part of this go, but we're going to stay here in the house and we're going to co-parent these kids together.
Wow.
So there was a middle way. It was a thought.
Huge.
I never thought it would have been possible. I never would have thought it was possible. I'm not saying everybody can do this.
Yeah, right.
Everybody can do this because
that
it depends.
Must mean like you guys are like really like just the marriage piece not working, a lot of other stuff working, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that when we thought it had to be, we were at constant. And I'm not saying that all of a sudden we made that decision. It was like, well, life became easy. No. Right. But it became easier it became doable. Right. And it allowed me to say, all right, I can stay sane. I don't have to sacrifice my mental and emotional health.
Right.
Or I don't have to sacrifice because we had kids. We had two boys, my son and her son, in high school at that point and doing pretty well. And that it just feels fragile to me. And I was like, I don't want to mess this up. And their other parents had been through multiple relationships, multiple households. So these kids have been cycled on the other side of their life. We were their sort of stability.
Okay.
And so we were able to find a middle way. Again, I'm not saying everybody can do that. I'm not saying you should stay for the kids. I'm not saying any of that.
That's just what you did.
I'm saying that we were able to find another way. And if we look at decision making, one of the basic principles of decision making is, are there options you're not thinking of?
Right.
Often referred to as the third way.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
What it's stay or go. We found a third way.
Right. Totally.
So we want to look at that, where can we, if we're feeling like we're forced into a binary choice, is there, either quit my job and do podcasting or don't do it at all? Okay, well, there's a middle ground, right?
Totally.
So that's an example of all or nothing thinking that we want to really look at in our lives. Where can we find a middle way, a third way, another way?
Yeah. And now, it's a perfect time because it's a silver lining, I think, of the pandemic, that not only is there a lot more remote telework, work from home kind of opportunities, but there's also, like, I was lucky enough to get a job where I'm working 4/10s. So that means I get every Friday off. So that's why all of my record days are on Friday.
Yeah.
It worked out perfect. It could not have worked out any better. So, Eric, this has been a blast. I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me for a third time. You're extra crazy, I guess.
I guess. And I am extra grateful to you for doing it again.
I appreciate it. So you have a good day and good luck with food rescue.
Yeah.
And thanks, and have a good one. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.